Hey folks, March 30th, 2026. So today's garden tour time, and we're gonna walk through bed to bed and show you what's going on. Not a whole lot going on just yet. Got some transplanting to still do. The weather's been a lot of up and down, bobbing and weaving. And through that, so a lot of my direct sowings got crushed. I'm trying to reestablish some things. We'll see if it works or not. Long story short, for the whole season, things will be fine. I got plenty of stuff to put in. And if some crops don't work, some others will, so I'm not gonna worry too much about it. A little bit of background on this garden. It is 8,100 square feet. It is no dig. I do very little irrigating. I use a watering can for when I need to water things. I kind of rely on Mother Nature to kind of keep things damp, and the organic matter that I put on to kind of hold that moisture. Plus I'm on native clay here, which I've top dressed with the organic matter. So if roots can penetrate to that native clay, and there is a little bit of moisture in there, it should do a pretty good job of keeping things hydrated. No fertilizer, no insecticide, fungicide, pesticide, or herbicide. Not unilaterally opposed to any of those things. It was more of a philosophical approach that I wanted to take early on, where I said, can I use organic matter to drive growth good enough so I didn't have to rely on outside inputs? It's contextual, so if your context doesn't allow for you to not use amendments, inputs, and additives, use them. The main thing we gotta do is get out there and actually grow something. But if you can back off some of those because you have enough organic matter and good enough soil to grow, it to me it helps that I don't have to rely on something that may not be available tomorrow when I go to the store. So that's really why I kind of take that approach for now, and it seems to work. If it doesn't, I'll change. But that's the background. Let's get into the beds. As we walk into the garden gate, you're gonna see basically beds running up 3 rows. There's 16 in each. There's a little bit of a raised bed over there, and then all along the western and northern edge are my berries. And then I have pots of blackberries that I overwintered outside and in the barn when it got bad, and now in the garden. I've noticed that the deer like to kind of pop these things a little bit when they're young and tender versus the figs, so I kind of store them in here along with the aronia or chokeberry, just because I like to make sure that because the deer will hit those as well. And as we get into beds 1 through 5, it's my garlic crop. You can see these things are coming up really, really strong right now. I'm really happy with the overall quality of the plant. Now, I have a video on how not to plant garlic. I put it together last October, and I said how not to plant garlic because I did a couple of practices that are a little unconventional, because I have an issue with garlic mites all of a sudden starting up a couple years ago. And I peeled every single clove and I soaked them for about 20 minutes in a hydrogen peroxide water solution to see if I can kill anything that was living on them. And yeah, and again, everything germinated, everything grew, everything's looking nice and strong right now. So I feel good about the fact that I'll get a crop. Whether or not that crop is going to have mites, you know what, again, I'm going to bet that it will, and I'll just have to figure out how to store so that I can, because I'm still eating my garlic from last year and I've lost a lot to the mites. There's still some pretty good cloves and bulbs around, but it's coming to an end. Yeah, so I'll probably have to do a little bit more, maybe freezing earlier in the season before I lose them to the mites. At the end of this 5th bed, I've got a couple of potatoes. I think this is the start of my Pontiac Reds, and there's one lettuce plant that I transplanted in there that I pulled from a pathway. But now we're going to get into all of these beds. These are my potato beds running down for a while. We've got Pontiac Red, we've got Kennebecs, we've got Yukon Golds, we got some pathway lettuce that's coming up here, 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 and here, which is actually really awesome because my I got some more actually that look like they're popping up. My undercover sowings of lettuce have not done well this spring, so I will have some plants out here to eat off of while I'm waiting for the other ones to come up. But back to the potatoes. The reason you're not going to see them right now, they actually did all pretty much pop out of the ground, but we had another freeze coming through the other night, so I have a bunch of shredded compost on hand, and I top dressed every single potato bed to make sure that the actual plant was covered. If we pull it back, you can see there's a plant, and this looks like it didn't get bit, so it did get covered properly. And yeah, I'm expecting this, and I'm not going to pull the compost back off the plants. I'm going to kind of rely on their power to push through and just call it a bit of a deeper bed now with a little bit more of a soil amendment on them. As we come on down further, this bed, so that was a Yukon Gold bed. This was a Brussels sprouts bed coming through the winter. I ate off the Brussels sprout leaves for a long time, but they all bolted all of a sudden about a week ago. So they came out of the ground. I kind of smoothed the surface out, and I got to figure out what I'm planting there. That kind of broke up the flow of the potatoes because this is also a Yukon Gold bed. But yeah, so not sure what's going to go in there. Yeah, I've got plenty of plants to come out here. It might be another onion bed. We'll get into that in a bit. My asparagus bed. So asparagus, I'm finding out, is not very cold hardy. And I say that because the crown survived, but all the shoots that are coming out of the ground, when we had that freeze come through the other day, I actually popped a couple off for eating. I left some on, and we did have them get hit, and they kind of melt a little bit. Now, they didn't get hit as bad as when they got hit by the 3 nights that we had that were roughly in the mid to high 20s. That was about a week and a half ago, and that really destroyed pretty much any growth that was on there. The crowns, I think, are still healthy enough to keep going. I'm not going to pick off them much more because I really want to make sure that they put that energy into the root system, because they were sowed as seeds in January of 24. So 24. Yeah, so I want to wait till 27 before I start harvesting, and I'll harvest hard next year. And then we come to my blackberries. This is, again, I've said it before, I think this is my favorite section of the garden. I just love blackberries. I love eating them. I love growing them. I love pruning them. I like shaping the plants. I do a better job on some than others. Like this one, for example. I'm really thrilled with the shape of this. It's got 2 main canes coming out of the ground. You can see. And this lateral branch I took and I tipped at about the 2.5 foot mark. And some I did a little shorter, some I did a little bit longer, depending on how they were, how healthy they looked. But yeah, I think, and on the other side of this, against the fence line, I've got more. I've got a couple that are out of control. I've got a couple that are really well pruned. But yeah, I'm really, really thrilled with the blackberries. And if you're wondering why I have this little filing crate here, this is why. This is a blackberry plant that's coming off of a root system, and I pop these off periodically and I throw them in potting mix to grow them out. This one I'm going to let go a little further along before I pull it, but this keeps me from stepping on it. And as we come along, more of the berries. This last one's probably my favorite variety here. This is Primark Freedom. It is a primocane fruiting variety that also fruits on 2nd year growth. The primocane, I'm not that thrilled with the production. It'll produce on its 1st year canes in September, October. It's nice to have fresh berries at that point, but they're really not a great berry compared to that same cane when it fruits further down on its growth in about a month from now, maybe a month and a half. That's a bigger berry and a tastier berry and a more productive berry. I'll still eat the ones that come off of on September, October, November, but it's just not as good. And this one propagates off the ground like crazy. I've pulled a ton of plants out of the pathways from this guy. And then we got the blueberries, and they all seem to be breaking dormancy well. This guy's the front runner for quality. I don't know what's going on with Tiff Blue here. He has not broken dormancy on his main cane at all, but he is throwing out new canes off there. And I expect to see more new canes coming off of these, all these plants over time. But why that main one's not breaking dormancy at all is beyond me. If it doesn't break in another 3 weeks, I might just chop this whole thing out, call it dead, and let it, bounce back with the new canes. That'll be a fun experiment. That little crate is not covering anything. I think I left that out there because I had another plant that I recently pulled out of the ground. This is a raised bed that I have in here. I originally put this in because I wanted a deep bed for deeper tapping carrots and parsnips, but because when I chopped up my potatoes, my seed potatoes, I had extra pieces that didn't fit in the original beds that I had, and I said, what the hey, let's throw it in there. There's actually, I think it's probably about 20 square feet, 2 feet by 10 feet, and I think there's 26 pieces of Yukon Gold in there. That's gonna be pretty packed with potatoes if it goes well. They are breaking dormancy in there. I can pull that compost back and see those tips starting to come through a little bit. And then we've got these beds I haven't really done anything with yet. This is overwintered kale that made it, along with that and some of these over here. I do need to wood chip this pathway. I think I have just enough wood chips to still maybe do these 2 pathways, but we'll see. Interestingly enough, I don't have an idea of what yet I want to put this. These actually may be my 3 tomato beds. 1, 2, 3. I do a determinate variety of San Marzano, and that's kind of the only tomato I do. I'll let some cherry tomatoes kind of self-sow in the garden here and there that I use for salads. But I really don't do much in the way of slicing tomatoes in the house because I eat mostly out of bowls instead of sandwiches, and the paste tomato works really well for me. So basically what a determinate variety of San Marzano does, it grows to about 2 feet tall, throws all of its fruit pretty much at one time, like within a 3-week period, and then it's done. So it's around late June to mid-July that we're going to do all of our processing of the tomatoes, and then these beds open up for fall plantings. No idea what it's going to be, and as you can see, I did top dress this one as well with some compost. I talked about this in an earlier video, how I used a more chunky compost before I started shredding it. And again, the soil underneath is actually in really good shape, so when it comes time for me to put a plug in there, I can just pull the material off to the side, put the plug in there, make sure the plug doesn't get covered by this, like the actual plant, but as long as all the root system winds up in the better stuff, this is going to be a nice little mulch layer to hold that moisture, because actually this is really dry right now, but what I just pulled out from underneath and just held in my hand felt very damp. So I feel really good about the fact that that top dressed with kind of not really that well decomposed organic matter is still going to produce a great plant. More kale. I actually spent time pruning this guy up to get him ready for the spring because he overwintered, and look at that, he bolted on me. I've never actually had a red Russian kale bolt, and this, I'll tell you what's really going to freak me out right now. See that right there? I don't know if the camera's picking it up. That's those are pests on the brassicas. Cabbage loot. I don't know what. I can't remember what variety that is, but I got to get them out of here because they decimate my brassicas in the spring. And they're usually not here this early because I usually don't overwinter brassicas, so that may stop me from doing that in the future. As we come on down, we still have more pretty beds that have nothing going on yet until we get here. And this is a bed where I just transplanted some mixed brassicas, mostly broccoli, and I don't think a lot of it's going to make it necessarily. It's just, that's kind of the story of my spring right now. And there's some mixed mustard in here. I do have more mustard plants to go, and they're probably going to go next door over here. As long as I have a big dark leafy green, I'm really not picky about what variety it is, whether, and if cruciferous is the broccoli, as is the mustard, so, you know, flip a coin, I'll eat either one. And I do have Swiss chard as well undercover, so I'm going to have a bed of chard and a bed of some kind of a brassica, and that's going to be enough for me. My sugar snap peas, I put them in, again, they came in the ground, they went in the ground prior to those 3 freezing nights, and they took a beating from that and really they haven't bounced back from that yet. Didn't get as good germination as I want. I may go ahead and put a few more seeds in some of the gaps, or I may just say forget about it. Beets, anything that was germinating in there got killed by those 3 freezing nights. It was direct sowed, and I'm still trying to get them to, and so I re-sowed it and trying again. Same with the carrots. And then we've got onions, and these are direct sowed onions, and I can see I've got okay germination. I can't remember which variety this is. I've got 3 beds, 1, 2, and 3. These 2 have the same variety, and this one has 1 variety. I think this is Round Tropea, and those 2 are Red Weatherfield. Undercover Round Tropea, I have a 144 cell pack sowed of that with pretty good germination. I have 144 packs sowed of the Red Weatherfield as well, much worse germination. And actually, it's kind of showing the same way in the beds too, if I'm right. And these are the Red Weatherfields. And I did the undercover sowing as well because I wanted to use those to plug any holes that we have in these. And it looks like I've got plenty. But I didn't want to start plugging into the holes of these yet until they did more. I wanted to see them more established and germinated before I did that. This is a sage plant that I planted last year. I really don't do much in the way of herbs, but it did beautifully. And I'll probably do more with this year. Didn't cover him over winter. He just turned brown and then turned green again. And he's pushing out new growth. I can see all that's new. So yeah, we got a surviving herb. Tells me that in this climate, and sage is probably perennial in general. I haven't done some research on it, so I need to figure that out. But it tells me he is a good one for this climate. I did a video a couple weeks back where I called it Food Pantry Diaries, where I was trying to get these 3 beds to be exclusively growing stuff for the food pantry. And again, they were sowed prior to that freeze. Carrots, dead. Beets, dead. Turnips, dead. The turnips actually germinated. I saw them in there. These guys never really popped much. But the turnips I saw germinate. I kept them watered in. They looked really great, and then they died. You can see turnips back there. Those are actually transplanted from stock that I wanted to eat for myself, but I felt really bad that I failed this bed for that purpose. So I said, you know, I can always sow more undercover and get for myself. I'll give these to the pantry if they grow out. And then we've got my strawberry beds. I've got 8 of these. The 2 varieties I have in here are Chandler and Sweet Charlie, though they are all intermingled, so I don't know who is who. But yeah, we've got flowers coming on. And if I remember correctly, it was around April 21st or 22nd last year that I started harvesting strawberries. So yeah, if it holds, we're less than a month away from harvesting strawberries. And I'm doing half the quantity that I had last year. Basically because last year I had too many. And I'm hoping that this is enough this year, because we do try to get a lot in the freezer. If I don't get to eat that many fresh, I'll kind of get over it, because I'm really trying to grow for the calendar year from harvest to harvest. So if I don't get to gorge myself on strawberries, I'll be okay with that, because I'm still eating through last year's, and I've still got plenty of other berries to work on. Don't know what's going to go into these beds yet. I'm thinking, just off the top of my head, making this a pepper bed. My pepper germination this year undercover has not been good at all. 2 varieties that are doing, one variety that's doing great is Aleppo. One that's doing okay is Shishito. My Fatalis were okay, but something picked at them, I think. My habaneros did terribly. I've got another round of habaneros that are doing much better. My bells are doing terrible as well. So I haven't quite figured out what I'm strategically going to do this year on that front. But these, to me, when I look at them, are just, it screams pepper beds. Also because I've never had peppers up in this area before. Not that I do any crop rotation, but it's something that I just kind of keep in the back of my head a little bit. Fava beans. Didn't do well with them last year. I don't know why I planted these this year, but they popped up out of the ground. We'll see if they actually go. Last year, they were in the first 2 beds of this row, and they were growing great until they weren't. And then all of a sudden, boom, they rotted out. And I'm wondering if it's because last year we had a whole hell of a lot of rain, and despite the fact that my beds seemed to drain pretty well while simultaneously holding a pretty decent amount of moisture, it might have been too wet for them. But yeah, not great germination. That's all home save seed. I'll let these things finish out until probably the end of May. We should have something, maybe mid-June. And that's a good time for me to transplant some warm season stuff as well. Asparagus bed number 2. This one only got 6 crowns. I think I put 13 in there, but 7 didn't make it because they were really root bound in the pots. And I transplanted them during a really hot time. So 6 made it, 7 didn't. I'm going to try to fill those holes with more asparagus plants in the future, but I don't have any undercover sown because my attempting to germinate seeds on those this year failed as well. Man, story of my spring. So yeah, we'll figure that out going forward in the future. Maybe I'll save some seeds from them, because I know I have males and females out here. And I got my raspberry plants. It's the variety is Caroline, which is an everbearing first year growth apparently. And yeah, I'm happy with this variety so far. It's all broken dormancy. I get it from a local guy who's about 40 minutes away from me. I got some blackberries, my elderberries, and my aronia from him a couple years ago, and my blueberries. Like the guy, class act, good prices, good quality. Happy to go back to him. And I think what I'll do with these is, this is now a 2nd year cane. When I see the new 1st year canes coming out of the crown, I'm gonna go ahead and cut these back, because I don't want them to fruit later in about 2 or 3 months. I don't want the energy to go into that. I really want the energy to go into the new growth and the root development. This is a Celeste fig that actually was transplanted almost 1 year to the day last year. My garden tour last year, I think, was March 26th. I'm almost positive it was, because I've mentioned that a couple of times. But this went in the ground as a plant yay big. And yeah, I got about 4 feet of growth out of it almost. Now, it hasn't started breaking dormancy yet. A little concerned about some of the burn on these terminal buds. I pruned it a little bit just to kind of shape it up, and I probably could have done more. At this point, I'm going to leave it alone, only because I want to see I'm not really worried about producing figs on it this year. It probably won't do much of any of that, but if the more leaves I can get on it, the more it can photosynthesize, the bigger the root system should grow at that point, which next year should produce more of a hardier plant that should push out some fruit, because that'll be year 3. Now we've got the Aronia 1, 2, and 3. These guys are growing great, and for those of you who aren't growing this plant, it seems like it's relatively pest resistant, hardy. It grows without any effort on my part. I put no effort forth in this crop. And for propagating, you see how this branch here is just laying on the ground? It came off of the root system somewhere in there. It got buried with wood chip and it started rooting. I can just physically rip this out of the ground with some roots, stick it in a pot, and root it out and have another plant. How do I know I can do that? Because I have 4 over by the gate, and I'll show them to you before we leave, that I did the exact same thing with. One of them I actually thought was a weed. I yanked it out of the ground, looked at the form of the branch and the coloring, matched it up to the others, and realized it was actually a plant, and it's broken dormancy. And my elderberry, we've got Bob Gordon and Wildwood, and I was going to take these back to the ground in the spring and let them regrow from scratch and propagate all of that for new plants, but I was inventorying my pots and my fig cuttings and realized I did not have enough to do both, so I chose figs instead. No regrets. Empty spot here. Last year, calendar-wise, one of my last videos was blackberry propagation, where I was yanking suckers out of the ground. I think I got 8 of them. And I pulled one that was a crown. And I looked at that big crown and I said, I wonder if this is still alive. Let me go ahead and plant it. So I planted it there. And of course, now I've got another blackberry plant. No, again, I think this is a Primark Freedom, so no regrets about that, because it is my favorite variety. But it just, that's how I wound up with another blackberry bed. There's now I think there's 17 plants in here. And this was all done in the fall of 2024. Yeah, so in 2024, all of these went in the ground from either 4-inch square pots or maybe 1 gallons that I was taking plants out of the ground over behind me, putting them in the pots, rooting them out for a few months, transplant them here in 2024, probably call it average September. In 2025, when those original plants, which weren't very big, broke dormancy, I did exactly what I said I'm going to do on the raspberries. I cut back all of that growth to the ground while the new growth was coming out, and this is the result. So this all grew last year, and I gotta say, I like the idea of taking off that early second year growth to give the first year growth on the go forward that really good first year of energy, because I think it paid some dividends for me. These are the 4 Aronias that I've got. They all came out of like I said, they all came off the plant the same way. They were ground layered. Ground layering is basically where you cover up a portion of the wood on the ground. That's on the ground, you kind of layer over top of it, and being in contact with the soil and the moisture, it will, if there's root nodes to be developed, they'll grow. You rip them out of the ground, you put them in a pot, and I think this guy here is the one that I thought was a weed, and it turned out to not be. So, happy accident. So yeah, this is what the garden looks like in late March 2026. Last year, I think I was a bit ahead of where I am right now. But like I said, this hasn't been a good spring for me yet, but it'll pick up. I've got some stuff under cover that looks okay. The weather's breaking nicer. We've got to get some rain here and there, and that's going to help a lot. And then if the spring isn't that good, the summer will be, because we're really hot. And at the end of the day, as long as I get berries, the potatoes are going to do fine. The sweet potatoes always do great. The okra will do great. I'll throw black-eyed peas in later, and they're heat lovers as well. So, and I've got, like I said, I've got at least 1 variety, if not 2 varieties of pepper that are going to do well. So, again, some years are better than others. This one's not shaping up to be my best ever. But it's not going to stop me from pushing forward, because it's what you do. So if you have any questions, please let me know, post below. I'll be happy to chat it up with you. And yeah, appreciate you coming out. Until next time, take care.